The mid-budget adult crime thriller used to be one of Hollywood's most reliable genres. Heat, The Town. No Country for Old Men. Films built around heists, detectives, and moral ambiguity rather than superhero mythology or animated sequels. Films made for adults who wanted to watch something genuinely tense on a Friday night. For a long stretch, those films opened solidly, ran on word of mouth, and turned respectable profits without needing to crack $300 million. That market has gotten much harder. And Crime 101, which opened February 13, 2026 to roughly $14 million and finished its theatrical run at around $73 million against a $90 million budget, is one of the clearest recent examples of a studio betting that it hadn't. Reviews were strong and the cast was stacked. The film was directed by a genuinely talented filmmaker. The premise was clean and well executed, and it still lost a significant amount of money. Today I want to dig into how that happens and whether anyone involved should have seen it coming. Let's get into it. The film is based on a 2020 novella by Don Winslow, one of the most respected crime writers working today, best known for his acclaimed trilogy The Power of the Dog, The Cartel, and The Border, books that earned serious critical attention and helped establish him as a defining voice in modern crime fiction. Adapting Winslow is a credible starting point. His work has texture, moral complexity, and a specific sense of place that translates well to screen. Bart Layton was hired to write and direct. Layton's previous work includes the acclaimed documentary The Imposter and the narrative documentary hybrid American Animals films that demonstrated a genuine and distinctive visual intelligence. He isn't a mainstream blockbuster director. He's an ideas-driven filmmaker with a documentary instinct for observed detail and a track record of critical respect. That's exactly the kind of hire that signals a studio wants something with real texture rather than assembly line execution. The film stars Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Barry Keoghan, and Halle Berry, with Monica Barbaro, Corey Hawkins, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Nick Nolte rounding out the cast. That ensemble doesn't happen by accident. Somebody was spending real money on real talent with real intentions. Principal photography took place primarily in Los Angeles, with extensive 101 freeway sequences requiring coordination with city authorities and the California Highway Patrol. Eric Wilson's cinematography treated the freeway as a character in itself. The film premiered in London on January 28, 2026, and was released in the United States by Amazon MGM Studios on February 13. The Valentine's Day weekend positioning was clearly intentional, a date when adult audiences traditionally turn out for premium theatrical experiences. On paper, almost every creative decision here was sound. Crime 101 opened in third place on Valentine's Day weekend with roughly $14 million for around 3,160 locations, below the pre-release tracking range and below what a $90 million production needed to suggest a viable theatrical run. That opening was disappointing. The second weekend was worse. The second weekend brought a drop of around 61%, with earnings sliding to approximately $5 million from the same theater count. A drop of that magnitude is the kind of number that effectively ends a theatrical run. It signals that the people who showed up opening weekend weren't compelling their friends to follow. Whatever the film delivered, it wasn't generating the urgent word of mouth that sustains a mid-budget original release. The film grossed approximately $37 million in the United States and Canada, and around $36 million internationally, for a worldwide total of roughly $73 million against its $90 million production budget. Add the marketing spend, which on a wide theatrical release of this scale typically runs into the tens of millions, and total exposure was likely somewhere north of $130 million. Since theater owners keep roughly half of ticket sales, Crime 101 would have needed to sustain a long theatrical run well beyond opening weekend to justify its price tag. It didn't. The film moved to Amazon Prime Video on April 1, 2026, less than 7 weeks after its theatrical debut. Whether streaming performance softens the financial picture is genuinely difficult to assess. Industry observers noted that viewership metrics across streaming platforms go largely unreported, making it nearly impossible to determine what constitutes a win in the streaming era, a point rivals viewed skeptically as justification for an expenditure of this size. This is the central problem, and it's worth dwelling on. The Town Ben Affleck's Boston Heist film, widely considered a benchmark for ensemble crime dramas, was made on $37 million and earned around $154 million worldwide. Heat, the LA crime epic that Crime 101 was deliberately referencing in its freeway structure, cost around $60 million on an adjusted production basis and earned around $187 million. Crime 101 cost $90 million and earned roughly $73 million. The genre's ceiling hasn't expanded to match modern production costs. If anything, the theatrical audience for adult-oriented R-rated crime films has contracted as that demographic has increasingly shifted toward premium streaming. spending $90 million to make a film that the comparable genre benchmark The Town made for $37 million required everything to go right. Almost nothing did. The date positioning made sense in theory, adults out for an evening looking for something other than an animated film or a superhero sequel. The execution was harder. Wuthering Heights led the weekend with around $40 million domestically, capturing the female-skewing Valentine's Day demographic. Almost entirely more than 75% of its opening weekend crowds were women. That's the audience that historically makes adult-oriented theatrical releases work. Crime 101 and Wuthering Heights weren't competing for the same viewer on paper, but in practice the Valentine's Day theatrical budget is finite, and Wuthering Heights absorbed most of it. Go debuted in second place with around $26 million, taking the family demographic. That left Crime 101 competing for a specific slice of adult male audience on a weekend when the broader theatrical pie was already divided. This point is worth making carefully, because Hemsworth is a capable actor who reportedly does genuinely interesting work in this film. But his theatrical audience, historically, shows up for Thor and for established IP. His non-franchise original theatrical projects have had a mixed record at this budget level. Hemsworth commands a leading fee in the $20 million range for major studio productions, which means a meaningful portion of that $90 million budget was committed above the line before a single frame was shot. Whether his marquee value translated to opening weekend ticket sales for original material in this genre appears, based on the numbers, to be limited. This is speculative, but worth raising. Amazon's business model treats theatrical release partly as a prestige pipeline for Prime Video. Industry rivals were skeptical about whether streaming performance could justify an expenditure of this size in theatrical, and that skepticism appears in retrospect to have been warranted. When audiences know or reasonably assume that a film will be on their streaming subscription within weeks, the theatrical imperative weakens. That's a systemic issue rather than a Crime 101 specific one, but it applies most acutely to mid-budget adult dramas, which is exactly the category streaming has absorbed most effectively. The film's cinema score of B isn't a disaster. Adult crime thrillers don't typically pull A grades in the way crowd pleasers do. But in the context of a film that needed genuine legs to justify its budget, solid rather than enthusiastic is the difference between a run and a collapse. The roughly 61% second weekend drop confirmed what the cinema score suggested. Audiences who saw it weren't urgently sending others. Honestly, it sounds like it largely is, and the critical response backs that up. Crime 101 holds an 88% critic score and an 85% audience score, and has been cited by several publications as one of the best reviewed films of 2026 so far. That's a real achievement for an original crime film in a market that rarely produces them at this level of craft. Don Layton's documentary instincts apparently translate well to the genre, the observational approach to the heist sequences, the attention to procedural detail, the way the 101 freeway functions as a genuine visual motif rather than just a location. These are qualities that critics consistently flagged as distinguishing the film from more generic entries. Barry Keoghan's performance as Ormond generated the most sustained critical discussion, which given his current trajectory isn't surprising. He's in a run of form that makes everything he appears in worth close attention. The roughly 61% second weekend drop suggests the film asks something of its audience that not everyone was ready to give on a February Friday night. That's a genuine tension. A film can be well made and still not be what a casual theatrical audience wants in a particular window. Crime 101 appears to sit in that gap, critically validated, commercially stranded. Crime 101 isn't a cautionary tale about bad filmmaking or reckless creative choices. It's something more instructive, a cautionary tale about a $90 million bet on a genre the theatrical market no longer reliably rewards at that cost. Made in a February window that was more crowded than it appeared. Distributed by a studio whose primary business incentive pointed towards streaming rather than sustained theatrical performance. Amazon MGM, which also released Mercy earlier in 2026 to similarly disappointing results, is expected to rebound with Project Hail Mary, a Ryan Gosling sci-fi adaptation built on established IP and a pre-existing fan base. That contrast is itself telling. The films Amazon MGM appears most confident backing at this budget level are either IP adaptations or talent-driven projects with demonstrable pre-existing audiences. Crime 101 was neither. It was a well-made original film in a genre the theatrical market has been quietly exiting for a decade. The formula that produced Heat in the Town still produces good movies. It just doesn't reliably produce $200 million anymore. And at $90 million, that's the number you needed. What do you think? Did you see Crime 101? Did it deserve better at the box office? And do you think studios should keep making original adult crime films theatrically, or has that window genuinely closed? Let me know in the comments.